My name is Bill Huizenga. I'm a freshman congressman from the 2nd District in Michigan. And you may be kind of wondering, what's a freshman doing with a bill that's been around for a decade? Well, I actually happen to have the pleasure of being the district director for Congressman Pete Hoekstra, my predecessor, who started working on this. And I also am home to currently 2 of the 3 largest office furniture makers in the world, Herman Miller and Hayworth. That's going to be expanding under redistricting, and I'll be taking in steel case as well. And that had been a major issue for us back home when we were dealing this. And we welcome you here today as we shed light on this very important issue, which is literally restoring competitive access to businesses across America from government contracts. And as you can see, this is something that is bipartisan. We can all agree on this one. And we're working on making sure that it's bicameral as well. That actually might be tougher, right, Congresswoman, getting the Senate sometimes rather than Republicans and Democrats together. But this bill has seen bipartisan support over the years. It's soon to be bicameral. The sponsorship of this has been broad. And as you'll hear, it's an issue that affects virtually all states and a variety of industries, as you'll see in this chart back over here. So we have some folks here today with us. Dick McDonald. Dick is with T3 Global Strategies, a small business in Pennsylvania. John Pelletiello over here, who is head of the Business Coalition for Fair Competition. And then Alan Bubis, who is Chief Executive Officer of Linens of the Week, Bubis, right? Ellen, and located in Washington, D.C., and with a moniker like Huizenga. I know what it's like going through life sometimes with the challenges on a name. So with that, this is, as I was saying, this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart, and you're looking at one of the reasons right here. This is one of the best sellers in the office furniture industry. And the Aeron chair, created by Herman Miller, built in my hometown back in Zeeland, Michigan, and it is widely used. If you don't have one, I'd highly recommend it. It's a great seating enjoyment. So, yeah, it's not just Herman Miller. We actually looked into it. There are 17 private wholesale and manufacturing facilities and companies near my small town of Zeeland, Michigan, in western Michigan. And of course, every government agency needs those chairs. But sometimes Herman Miller or Hayworth or Steelcase can't even compete for those bids and even bid on those contracts. And that's what happens instead is Unicor, or the Federal Prison Industries, a government-owned corporation which employs prisoners under the Federal Bureau of Prisons to manufacture products and provide services that are then sold to federal agencies. Now get this, they have 89 factories in most states. That was something that really blew me away, that their impact and their footprint is that big. And sometimes these agencies are required to buy FPI products or services without being even allowed to shop around for the greatest value. And one of the great memories I had on this issue back when I was working for Mr. Hoekstra was when the Social Security Administration opened a brand spanking new office in Holland, Michigan that was literally within eyesight of one of these office furniture makers, Hayworth, within 10 miles of Herman Miller and within 20 miles of Steelcase, yet they were not allowed to even bid on that contract. And we had to have Unicor Furniture go into this. It made absolutely no sense from a number of angles. Cost, delivery, the schedule that was on there. They actually delayed the opening of this, is my recollection, because they couldn't deliver the furniture on time. And here we are literally in the shadow of office furniture makers. So we're trying to make sure that this bill preserves market access for these products and services to the hardworking men and women, hardworking taxpayers of all of our districts. And it's simply one more easy, common sense way to preserve jobs and help to restore the economy and security here in the United States. And government currently does nearly 1 million jobs that the private sector could do. We believe that that has an impact of about $27 billion a year in taxpayer dollars that are going into there. Now, that's common sense that we need to put out there. I want to join my colleagues today, and with our legislation, you can find that at huizenga.house.gov/FPI. We need to end this. And with that, I want to turn it over to the distinguished ranking member. Ranking member Frank is actually delayed with the Financial Services Committee that both Congresswoman Maloney and I serve on. But with that, I want to introduce Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney from New York's 14th District along the east side of Manhattan, who has been a champion of this particular issue for nearly a decade, I think, is when you started working on that with Mr. Hoekstra. So with that, Congresswoman.
I want to thank Mr. Huizenga, and actually this is our second effort today. We passed a bill out of committee that we were both working on in financial services earlier. And what we're talking about today is American jobs and fairness. And the bill we're introducing, versions of which I helped author and which I co-sponsored over the last dozen years with his predecessor, Mr. Hoekstra, this bill will require the federal prison industries, or FPI, to compete with private sector businesses on a level playing field. Our bill should increase the number of private sector businesses winning government contracts, and it will improve the wages and working conditions of FPI employees. So our bill is a win for everyone, and we've been pushing so hard. Hopefully this year we'll be able to pass it and turn it into the reality of a law. For decades, the FPI brands have had an absolute monopoly as a supplier on things such as clothing, uniforms in the military, gloves in the military, and office furniture, and even 800 number call center services to the prison system itself and to agencies in the executive branch. That near monopoly was based on wages, taxes, and workplace regulations that the private sector could not possibly match. Some FPI employees are paid less than $1 an hour. For FPI businesses also pay absolutely no taxes or rent, and occupational health and safety laws do not apply. The reason that I have supported this for so long and worked for this FPI reform is that it impacted on my own district in New York. I had a glove manufacturer which was producing many of the gloves for the military. One day, without any notice, the military canceled their contracts and said that FPI was going to be doing the business from now on. These men and women were not even given an opportunity to compete. They weren't allowed to try to give a product that was better or cheaper to the American people and taxpayers. And with this action, Congressman Hoekstra and I formed really a coalition, a team effort, where we supported initiatives in our own states and across the country to protect the American worker. At the very least, give them notice. Let them have the chance to compete for this business. And our bill today will ensure fair competition, that federal contracts are awarded to the company that will provide the best products at the best prices and terms consistent with federal purchasing standards, and include a private sector impact statement for any FPI work that is accepted. At the same time, this bill will also phase in the federal minimum wage for FPI employees, require that FPI industrial workplaces adhere to OSHA rules, and enhance vocational training within the Bureau of Prisons to better prepare inmates to work in the private sector once they are released. This is a win-win for everyone. Private sector businesses who will win more federal contracts and improved working conditions, training, and wages for prisoners who are doing marketplace work. And I am very, very proud to support it. I'm pleased to stand with many American businesses that are competing with the FPI, and they should not have to compete blindfolded and with both arms tied behind their back, and in some cases not even given notice that the contracts are out there or that they're going to be taken away from them. And I must say, on a personal note, Congressman Hoekstra and I would often go before the FPI industries and appeal on behalf of certain companies, and in some cases we were successful. I believe this is an absolutely important bill for the American economy, for American business, and also for the inmates, as it will provide them with better training and vocational training for the time that they will be released. I thank you for including me, and I yield back. Just came from a hearing.
Yeah.
Still
Once
in
it's in
hearing
your-
mode.
It's
This
in
is
your
a nice
blood.
chair.
Those are great chairs. We're happy to get you a lot of second district product for your office. So, well, with that, I'd like to ask Dick McDonald, who is with T3 Global Strategies, a small business from Pennsylvania. Dick.
Thank you, Congressman. Good afternoon. My name is Dick McDonald, and I'm the Director of Federal Services with T3 Global Strategies. We're a small business located in the Pittsburgh suburb of Bridgeville, Pennsylvania, and we offer a full line of surveying, bathymetric mapping, and geographic information system services. I am also the current president of MAPS, a National Association of Mapping Firms. What federal prison industries just doesn't offer or produce tangible products. I want to affirm today that yes, in fact, FPI does perform mapping services. And many state prison industries have entered mapping related services, including geographic information systems or GIS, computer-aided design and drafting or CAD services, data entry, scanning, and digitizing. FPI has developed these capabilities to provide services to other federal agencies as well. FPI's own documents have said it is, and I quote, "It is broadening its prime contractor role in the areas of digitization of maps and GIS applications, digitization of engineering and facilities management drawings, and scanning and digitizing." Private sector mapping firms, including small businesses like mine, we already suffer from unfair government competition. There are dozens of federal agencies that do mapping in-house with federal employees, despite the fact that there are literally hundreds of private sector firms that could do this work as contractors to the government. We strongly support the legislation that Representative Huizenga and his colleagues have introduced. This legislation is long overdue and is especially needed today, given our high unemployment rate, and we should not be giving advantages to inmates when we have honest, law-abiding, tax-paying citizens out of work. Thank you very much.
And with that, I'd like to ask John Pelletiello, Business Coalition for Fair Competition, President.
Thank you, Congressman Huizenga, Congresswoman Maloney. I also have been involved in this issue for quite a number of years. And what is unique about this issue is a couple of things. Number one, Mr. Huizenga and Ms. Maloney talked about the very broad and bipartisan group of members of Congress that have led and supported this legislation over the years, and which they have reassembled behind this bill again this year. What has been gratifying is that a similar coalition has historically worked on this bill in the private sector. We have had the wonderful opportunity over the years of having the AFL-CIO and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We've had the National Association of Manufacturers and NFIB, and we've had Unite. We've had private companies and federal managers, all who believe that competition drives quality, and that has been lacking in this equation. In the past, the GAO has done studies of federal prison industries, and what they have found is that their products and services do not meet agency requirements. They are not necessarily delivered in a timely manner. They often are more expensive than the private sector, despite the advantages that FPI have, that others, including Ms. Maloney, have mentioned. Secondly, this is about a monopoly versus a competitive process. Monopolies are inefficient, whether they're government monopolies or private sector monopolies. So what this bill is all about is injecting more competition into federal procurement. It permits the private sector to offer their goods or services and let good old-fashioned market competition rule the day. And finally, as Mr. McDonald said, at a time of high unemployment, we shouldn't be giving preferences to inmates when you have law-abiding, hard-working Americans that want to work. The final point that I would make is this. This is a balanced bill. There are features in this legislation that provide alternatives to FPI actually being in competition with or usurping opportunities from the private sector. There are opportunities for FPI to serve organizations like Habitat for Humanity, where everything there is donated and there's not a business opportunity lost in that transaction. And finally, most importantly, the coalition that's behind this bill is very sensitive to the needs of guards and prison administrators, that you do not want idleness in the prisons and you do not want recidivism. Number one, this bill does provide alternatives to make sure there's not idleness, that there are actually more effective programs to rehabilitate and educate and occupy inmates. And historically, the inmates that have been in FPI actually have had higher recidivism rates than those in other programs. So this bill not only aims to inject competition and help the private sector, but there are features in the bill to help with prison management and actually help folks who are incarcerated to become better citizens upon their re-entry into society. So we strongly endorse the bill, congratulate Congressman Huizenga, Congresswoman Maloney, and look forward to working with a broad bipartisan coalition of private sector groups and members of Congress in enacting this bill into law. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. And it's interesting you brought up Habitat. When I was in the Michigan State Legislature, we actually had a similar situation, and we had to go in and change the law that allowed state prisoners to build sort of pre-assembled components for those Habitat homes. Gives them a skill, gives a productive outcome, beneficial outcome to society, and doesn't take away those private sector jobs, which I think is an important direction. So with that, Alan Bubis, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Linens of the Week, located here in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Congressman Huizenga, Congresswoman Maloney. I'm Alan Bubis, the Chief Executive Officer of Linens of the Week, a textile rental company which is headquartered in Washington, D.C. We have locations here in D.C., Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, and in Florida. I'm here representing the Textile Rental Services Association. TRSA is the national association representing industrial owners and textile manufacturers. In an effort to level the playing field in which the federal prison system has an unfair advantage, TRSA strongly supports H.R. 3634. In instances across the country, TRSA members are competing for business with prison laundries, in some instances in the public market space. Our ability to translate low inmate cost into sub-competitive pricing has made it much more difficult for competing private companies like us to succeed. Labor costs are the largest ongoing expense in our industry, and competing with prison laundries whose labor costs are far below prevailing rates creates an unfair playing field. Competing with the government does not foster a healthy business environment for us. This competition reduces the number of jobs that I and others in our industry are able to offer. TRSA members also make regular investments in the latest, most efficient laundry equipment to minimize our needs for water and energy. We use environmentally friendly detergent. We reduce, reuse, and recycle supplies. Prison laundries operations do not duplicate these green benefits. Although I believe strongly in job training for inmates, it should not be at the expense of private sector jobs. TRSA is very grateful to these members of Congress for taking a stand against government competition, and we look forward to seeing this bill become law. Thank you.
And with that, we've got an interesting perspective here with us, Jonathan Long, who will give you a little bit of his background and what he's had to deal with. John.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Long, and I'm the Program Manager for Military Systems for Proper International. Proper's been manufacturing clothing and textiles for the Department of Defense since 1967. We're very proud of that heritage. Our concern is the erosion of opportunity to compete for DoD business. Our industry's market share is declining because a significant portion of the DoD contracts in our field are being given to federal prison industries. This means that companies like ours can no longer even compete for those opportunities. While we support the intent of the FPI program, and we need to find ways to rehabilitate prisoners serving their terms. We don't believe that taking scarce jobs away from law-abiding citizens is the way to proceed. So our question is why the federal government would allow the removal of jobs from communities which are already impacted by high unemployment, because the FBI policy is to give those jobs to prisoners as a rehabilitation aid. These are factory jobs that could put people to work today, but instead, FBI is training prisoners to be sewing machine operators. These kinds of jobs won't be in existence anymore if FBI continues to take that work from private industry. We feel this policy seems a bit misguided and really negatively impacts our industry's ability to produce the most innovative equipment for our servicemen and women. And the established prisoner, when they're released, won't have much of a chance for employment because this same policy has taken those jobs away. We think that the FBI, it offers what we call a false economy. It promises low procurement prices and rehabilitated prisoner employment. In the end, we believe that the government will receive neither. FBI products such as the Army Combat Helmet, which were recently recalled last year due to poor quality, actually increase total program cost. And at the same time, neither the existing unemployed factory worker put out of a job because of the policy or the newly rehabilitated prisoner will be able to find jobs. The point now is to help control FBI's appetite for growth in the military clothing and textiles and push those jobs and production back into the private sector to stimulate job growth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and just in closing, I want to say appreciate you coming out here, and I'm one of the founding members of something called the Yellow Pages Caucus. And what the Yellow Pages Caucus is a group of individuals who have said, you know what, if you can find it in the Yellow Pages or in the modern equivalent of on your iPad, we have to think long and hard whether the federal government should be doing that and taking that potential business away from the private sector. Now, last time that there was a vote on this particular issue was in 2006. And with that, there was I believe the number was 362 yes votes and 57 no votes out of the House of Representatives. There's obviously been some turnover since 2006, but as we've gone through, we think that there's a good, solid, strong base of support here. A few of those House members at the time have moved to the Senate as well. We are having conversations with them as we are doing this, and with that, I think we'll take some questions. Yes.
Yeah, I kind of remember that 2006 vote. I was around when Representative Huckster was in this caucus. So that bill did not pass the Senate, I assume. But wasn't there an appropriations bill or some other bill that put some restrictions on FBI? And what happened with that? Is that no longer in effect, or did it just not do the job?
There was, in fact, Carl Levin, who has been very involved in this issue, my recollection was that he put a provision in, some language in the DOD bill at the time, which addressed some of those specific DOD issues as well. So there had been some progress that was made. I will tell you that one of the roadblocks at that time was a philosophical difference with the George W. Bush administration. That was something that Pete came up against, and part of that was experience coming off of Texas prisons. So that was some of those holdups at the time. Carolyn, do you have any other recollections on what had happened at that time?
There was also a pushback from some members of Congress in that they were very interested in the rehab work that was taking place with the prison inmates. So an improvement that this bill has are steps to provide the vocational education and vocational training and other supports that will help them get a job when they leave. I think it's very important that habitat, that the prison industries are developing products for Habitat for Humanity that is a total not-for-profit. And I think that we should look for other areas where we can do contributions to not-for-profit areas such as rebuilding the homes, but certainly you should not be taking it away from hardworking American men and women. A very important provision of our bill is that you have to provide notice and you have to allow the private sector to compete for their own jobs. You can't, as it stands right now, they can just go in there and take those jobs. And that's totally un-American and absolutely wrong. And I would venture that a hard-working American man and woman, if given the chance to compete, would win those jobs on the performance of their work. A very important factor, and one that we should get a GAO study on, is the fact that the helmets were produced and they were not up to standard, possibly putting American lives in jeopardy, costing money, delaying, and a problem. So when the prison industries goes in there, they are often not up to the standard that the private sector, man and woman, is supplying to this country. And I will never forget those workers who came in from the glove factory. They were devastated. Many of them were middle-aged and older. This had been their profession. They took great pride in the work that they were doing. And in looking at their faces, I could see that the jobs were not going to be out there for them. This is very wrong, unfair. At the very least, let them compete and let them work hard to continue the work they're doing to make this country strong.
Ken, with regard to your specific question, yes, there have been some piecemeal reforms that have been enacted over the last several years, but they've been just that. They've been piecemeal. Some of them applied only to the Department of Defense. Others were on appropriations bills and only were good for 1 year. And even with some of those piecemeal reforms, we still have companies that experience tremendous difficulty in being able to compete. So not all of those reforms have worked as well as we would want. And so we believe there is still the need for comprehensive reform, not only on the competition side, but also, as Ms. Maloney just mentioned, on the rehabilitation side as well. That's why we're back with a comprehensive bill at this time.
Yes.
Congressman, you all mentioned that we're in a fragile economy, jobs are scarce and all that. That's even more true out in the rural areas because there are fewer jobs and fewer employees. So what would the specific impact of your legislation have on rural America? You have a lot of rural areas in your district. You're absolutely urban, right, Congresswoman? But in rural America, what would the impact be?
Well, and if you look at some of the other supporters and sponsors of the bill, Jim Sensenbrenner from Wisconsin, Walter Jones from North Carolina, Howard Coble from North Carolina, a number of others that have been involved in this in the past. You're right, it's not just urban centers that produce, whether it's office furniture or wiring harnesses, et cetera, et cetera. So we believe that it's going to be, well, when they have 89 facilities around the country, that's a pretty wide swath of areas that we're covering. And I can tell you, for my area, we have a lot of people that will drive in from even more rural areas to go and work at Herman Miller or Hayworth or Steelcase and those kinds of things. So we think that this benefits not an urban center specifically, or not a rural area specifically, but really a broad spectrum of the area of the United States.
And basically the American worker, wherever they live. Thank you.
One last one.
Would this legislation make it so that FPI contracts would be phased out over time, or would it be just an immediate transition?
Well, one of the main elements is the ability to compete. So this doesn't end Unicorp, but it does then take that ability away for them to have exclusive bidding rights. And I think that's what most of us are looking for is not just policymakers. I believe that those that are in business are saying, hey, at a minimum, let us compete. Now we can still get beyond whether that's the right philosophical thing to be doing, having everything from recycling and sales and fleet management of vehicles, electronics, clothing, textiles, obviously office furniture. It's almost $130 million that I can tell you, $130 million to the office furniture industry is significant now. And it levels out the playing field as a start.
And what's so terribly unfair is they can go in now to a company and just terminate the contracts and take the business away. That's totally, totally unfair. I mean, private sector jobs, just go and say, we're no longer going to work with you, we're going to close it down, we're going to go to a prison.
Well, thanks again for being here today, and we'll stick around if anybody has any other specific questions. But with that, we will be looking forward to working with you all as we gain some progress on this